This is the Space Black MacBook Pro with the M3 Pro, and while I absolutely love it, using it at my desk has presented a bit of a problem. Because my desk setup was designed around my Mac Studio and the Mac Mini before it, things just never really fit properly and felt a bit clunky with laptops. I tried a few different stands with the MacBook and a variety of different accessories and layouts, and nothing ever felt right, so I decided to just start from scratch and really design a space where everything was a bit more intentional. I wanted to take everything that I'd learned from product testing over the last couple of years and make something as functional as possible and look good while doing it. So today I want to go through everything here, why I chose each of these items, how they've helped my workflow, and some of the things that I've learned along the way. I'm really hoping that this provides some inspiration for other folks looking to do the same kind of thing with their own setup, or at the very least, you'll be able to learn from some of my mistakes and the pain points that I experienced trying out a bunch of different products and layouts along the way. So with that said, let's get into it. Hey everyone, Kyle Erickson here. Putting together a good-looking functional desk setup often requires a lot of thought, especially if you're working from home and you have a lot going on in your space. I've been working from home since 2016 or so, and I've always found the space that I work in has a direct impact on my mood and my work. Working in a cluttered or messy environment never feels good, and I found that if you don't have a space that's designed around the work that you do and the products that you use, it's a lot easier for things to get messy or disorganized. For this space in particular, everything started with moving my entire workflow to the M3 Pro MacBook. Like I said, placing this MacBook at my desk felt a bit awkward previously, so I decided to start with a MacBook and work around that. Previously, I had a lighter setup that always kind of felt half finished, and I wanted to switch things up with something dark to match the Space Black MacBook and this space where I record a lot of videos in, so the first step was picking out the desk itself. I looked at a number of different brands and reached out and chatted to a few in particular, but what I ended up going with was this EFFYDESK Wildwood Acacia standing desk with their matching desk shelf. I was lucky enough that EFFYDESK was willing to send this one out to me, and you can get Acacia finished desks from various different other brands, but there were a couple of things that really set them apart for me. One, the standing desk controls are on the top surface of the desk versus on the front, which I was looking for this go around. On my old desk, I'd always wind up bumping the controls on the front and inadvertently moving it up and down, and with this, I don't have to worry about that. And two, on the opposite side of the table, there's a wireless charger that I can stick my phone on, so it's just one less accessory that I have to worry about sitting on my desk. And one of the main things that I want in here is just less stuff and clutter. It has a built-in cable management tray that's better and more functional than a lot of other ones made by other manufacturers, and there's a cutout that's hidden just behind my Thunderbolt dock where you can run all your cables through, so I just find it to be very well thought out. EFFYDESK is also a Canadian company, which I like, that not only focuses on building great products, but sustainability as well, which doesn't hurt either. The matching desk shelf is, again, very solid and well built. There's about 4 inches of clearance between the desk and the shelf, so in the future, if I buy a Mac Studio, which is highly likely if you know me, that will slide in there no problem, but for me, it sits at just the right height for my monitor to be at eye level, and there's enough space to hold my MacBook and my headphones. Speaking of the monitor, that is the Apple Studio display, which some of you may have seen pop up on the channel last month. That's obviously one of the few 5K options that you have for displays, and it's super color accurate for when I edit photos or make these videos. But for me, it's not just about the quality of the panel, but everything that comes along with it. The build quality of the Studio display is probably the best you're gonna find on a monitor with a full aluminum body and stand, and the speakers in here are fantastic, so that's allowed me to just get rid of my speakers in here altogether. It's also got a built-in mic and webcam, and it'll power my MacBook through the Thunderbolt connection, so rather than me having to run power cables for my Mac and speaker wires, webcam, all that stuff, I essentially just have one cable going to my Mac and the other for power, and there's no giant power brick or anything either, so it just keeps things a lot cleaner. If you guys want to know more about the Studio display, I'll leave a link to my review in the description, but beside it, there's my MacBook, which I have just sitting off to the left and a little bit behind it. The stand that's sitting in is the Humancentric vertical stand in matte black. I like this stand because it's solid aluminum, it's sturdy, and it matches the machine perfectly. It has these little rubber inserts that you can swap around depending on the thickness of your laptop, so so it's not going to get scuffed up or move around at all, and aesthetically it's not out of place, which can sometimes be a challenge with these. I played around with the idea of having my MacBook open at my desk alongside my monitor, but I just like having one display. It just keeps me a little more focused, and because I've got all these supporting accessories, it's effectively turning it into a pretty solid desktop machine. I switched over to the M3 Pro after testing it for a couple of weeks. I was previously using an M2 Mac Studio in this space, and I had a MacBook Air that I take out if I was working remotely, but I just wanted to consolidate everything to one machine, and this has ran everything for me without any issues. I'm gonna do a follow-up long-term review on this in a couple of weeks and go over how everything performs, but the nice thing is with this, I've only got 2 cables hooked up to it, one to the monitor and the other one to my Thunderbolt dock, so it's super easy to just pop out of here if I ever need to take this anywhere. Speaking of that dock, that is the CalDigit TS4, and that's been a mainstay for me for a couple of years now. I use the SD card readers on the front, constantly making these videos, and in my opinion, it's pretty much the gold standard when it comes to docks or hubs. There's 2 open Thunderbolt ports on the back, one of which I have connected to an external SSD at all times. I run pretty much my entire workflow from that external drive, and that is a Samsung 980 Pro sitting in this Hyper USB 4 enclosure that's compatible with Thunderbolt, and there's no perceivable difference between the speed of this drive and the internal one for almost everything. So rather than racking up mileage on the internal drive that's not serviceable, I'd rather work off an external drive to potentially increase the longevity of the internal one, and in the event that anything does happen, I can just replace the external drive. My headphones are connected at the back as well, sitting just above the dock on this walnut headphone stand from Amazon that hides away the excess cable nicely. Those are the beyerdynamic DT990 Pros that I usually pop on when I'm editing, and that takes care of pretty much everything that I've got wired to my machine. When it comes to wireless connections, I've got my keyboard and mouse, which are a bit different than what was in here before. I swapped out my Logitech MX Keys keyboard for the Apple Magic Keyboard with Touch ID. After using the iMac for a while, I just really like having Touch ID on my keyboard, and I think to get it in black, your only option is to buy it with a numpad, but I kind of wanted the numpad anyway for some apps like Blender for keyboard shortcuts. It did take a bit of getting used to because it does stick out an extra 4 or 5 inches beside the mouse, but now it's fine, and the mouse is the same Logitech MX Master 3S as before, just in a different color. I like this mouse quite a bit, but the one thing that I will caution folks on is the light gray or white looking version of this yellows really easily. That doesn't have anything to do with your hands being dirty, but it seems to be some kind of chemical reaction with skin oil. If you look this up, you'll see quite a few people having the same issue, so mine was already looking a little worn and it didn't match either, so I just replaced it with the graphite version. In my opinion, this is the best mouse out there for productivity. Granted, there aren't really that many great options. It has quiet clicks, so it's not overly noisy, and while I don't normally use the buttons on the side, I use the horizontal scroll wheel a ton when I'm editing videos or doing graphic design. The keyboard and mouse sit on the same Orbitkey Desk Mat that I've had for a while now. I just really love the look of this because it's kind of unique for a desk mat. It's got this little cable holder at the top if you have headphone cables or other cables that you want to keep out of your way. And all that stuff really blends well with the dark look that I was going for. I also needed to swap out my chair as that was white and stuck out like a sore thumb, and Flexispot was kind enough to provide me with their C7 Premium Ergonomic office chair. So full disclosure, Flexispot is a sponsor of this video, but regardless of that, this not only looks great with this setup, but the build quality is outstanding, and most importantly, it's super comfortable. The black seat cushion is soft and comfortable, and the back material is gray mesh that provides a nice combination of firmness and flexibility to effectively support my back. It's got this arc-shaped lumbar support cushion that automatically adjusts as you move around, which feels great on my lower back. Oftentimes I have a lot of tightness and discomfort there if I'm sitting for too long, and I find this really helps alleviate that. If you don't want that support cushion moving around on you, you can lock that into place, which is one of the many adjustments that you can make on this chair. Obviously, you can adjust the height like most other office chairs, but you can also adjust the seat depth, the armrest height and position, the headrest, recline position, and so on. And it just accommodates for a lot of different body types and seated positions, which you don't normally get in an office chair. I know that this is probably a minor things that some folks might not care about, but the caster wheels on here are also very smooth. I found on a lot of chairs, especially if you have pets, they don't always slide around easily, especially over time, but These are great in that regard. Highly recommend checking out this chair if you're looking for something that is comfortable with great support. Finally, we got to talk about everything surrounding the desk because in my opinion, that's what ties everything together. One of the things that stands out the most in this space, in my opinion, is the plant wall, which I've had up in here since the summer. I did want to keep this in here, and I'd actually planned to revamp the space way sooner than I did, with this being the first big part of it. That's made up of these fake, or however you pronounce it, plant squares that I found at IKEA. You can clip all these together, and the one thing that I love about that plant wall is not only does it add a bit of character to the room, but it's also very good at masking the presence of cables. They just don't stick out as much against the wall, so it just helps everything appear a bit cleaner. When I had these up before, I redid the rest of the setup, and it was sitting on its own. It felt pretty awkward or out of place, and I toyed with the idea of putting it in some kind of frame, but after measuring things out and thinking about things a little bit more, I opted to go with these wood slat panels. They fit pretty much perfectly in here, but to get everything to fit in here nice and snug, I did have to chop off a few inches from that plant wall and from the shelf above it. That shelf is the same one that was in here before. I just painted it black after I cut it to size, and there's the same plant and grid studio teardown as before. And on the wall is just some concrete textured peel and stick wallpaper I thought would kind of bring everything together. One thing worth mentioning about those wood slat panels, I bought those from Amazon, and there are a number of different brands out there. The ones that I have in my desk space are branded Olang Lab that go floor to ceiling, and the ones in the room that I'm in right now are branded UMI Acoustics. They're both relatively the same, both offer panels in the same size, but if I were to buy these again, I'd probably go with the UMI Acoustics for the panels at my desk as well. I just find that the actual wood veneer is a bit nicer, and it came with hardware, where the Olang Lab ones didn't. They're both nice, but I do find that there is a slight edge there, and for both of these spaces, the neon lights that you see are Lamomo neon LED strips that I've actually cut apart and soldered to fit. I tried them out in here first, and I really liked how uniform and bright the light was from them, so I decided to add a little accent at the desk there. But other than that, I just bought this little black drawer unit to keep all my cables and accessories in that I don't use as much, and a black shelf for the wall beside the desk. Both that I still want to play around with a bit. The space is still evolving, and frankly, that will probably always be the case, but as it stands right now, this might be the best looking, most functional that I've had things in here, and you'll probably see a lot more stuff filmed in here. This kind of matches the aesthetic of the channel a bit better than before, and it's just a nice change for how things were situated previously. I know that there's a lot that goes into a setup like this, so if you guys have any questions about how I have things set up in here that I didn't touch on, or you maybe just want to share something about your own setup that you love that I don't have in here, feel free to drop a comment down below. I hope this has given you some inspiration, or at the very least you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to hit that like button. If you want to see more tech related content, or see if we can do a human pyramid on my desk while adjusting the standing and sitting position, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next upload.